Lunar Abyss is a first-person shooter where you're a prisoner exploring a massive ancient structure beneath the moon's surface. And right away, what stands out in this game is this weird unsettling atmosphere. Your prison guard is quite literally fused into the walls. The whole place is full of grotesque body horror, and there is a constant feeling that something is watching you. It feels a bit like Dead Space meets Destiny's visual style, but with its very own grimy brutalist thing going on. So the game has you playing as a character named Fawkes, and early on something rather strange happens. This is not a spoiler. It happens right at the beginning. You get separated from your physical body and exist as a pure consciousness. And this impacts the gameplay, because it completely changes how you move. You can jump between these floating eyeball things to launch yourself across gaps, which actually becomes a very big part of the platforming. The game alternates between shooter segments and parkour sections, where you do stuff like wall running, double jumping, and dashing through timed obstacle courses. The shooting itself is straightforward, but it feels good. You start with a scout rifle that auto-locks onto enemies, and has unlimited ammo but overheats. Then you get a shield breaker that works like a shotgun. Later there's a railgun for specific enemy types. Most enemies, at least early on, are not that tough. You're breaking the shields, shooting them down, and then finishing them with an execution move. That execution gives you a choice. Hold the button for a heal, or tap it for an explosion. In practice, you will usually always want the heal, because the explosion doesn't nearly do as much damage as you would think. So there is one complaint so far, though this could change for the actual final build in the release version. And that complaint is that the combat feels a bit too easy for most of the game so far. The enemies don't move much, the AI doesn't seem very smart. The auto-aim does lots of the work, and you rarely feel like you're in actual danger. But then suddenly there's a boss fight near the end of the demo that spikes the difficulty way up. The platforming actually holds up better than the combat. Jumping between those eyeball launchers feels good. The movement is floaty in a way that actually works here, and some of these timed sections get genuinely tricky. There are also these mech segments where you possess giant wardens and stomp around with dual cannons. These are cool but really short. You're in and out in maybe a minute. Now as for the game's story, it has this whole religious cult angle. There's the old father who runs the prison, an old destroyed colony, something called the Scourge that wiped everyone out, and prophecies about the heart of the abyss. You meet this character Urion, who transforms you and mentions you're part of some bigger plan. The writing tries to be very mysterious and cryptic, but honestly it's so slow and dramatic that every conversation drags a bit. Every single line seems to get delivered like it's the most important thing anyone ever said. But this is just my subjective impression on this. The voice acting quality is actually pretty good, especially for an indie game, but the pacing kills it a bit. The game's progression is actually tied to your prison sentence. You begin with over 9,000 days, and completing missions reduces this. Dying adds days back. The game does have collectibles everywhere, nodes that give lore, health crystals, and these drift crystals. Visually, the game looks pretty good. Lots of purple and pink neon against dark industrial spaces. The monster designs are unsettling. The world design definitely tries and mostly succeeds to make you feel small in this massive decaying structure. And as I said, this works. But after a while everything starts looking a bit samey. These grimy corridors and platforms over endless drops gets repetitive. Keep in mind that based on my experience and research, the game's weapon arsenal is fairly restricted. The game seems to focus on 4 distinct weapons, rather than a massive loot pool, so the game focuses on utilizing this focused set of weapons. Their specific weapons are the assault rifle, a shotgun, you mainly need this for the shield breaks, the sniper rifle, and a pistol. The other tools are more interesting: double jump, air dash, ghost possession for parkour, the execution moves. Keep in mind there is no roguelike stuff here, despite the vibes suggesting it. It is a fully linear mission-based game. This structure works, but it's worth knowing that it's very straightforward. The game doesn't seem to focus on branching paths, no real choices, just moving forward through the story. Now I have to talk about some criticism the game is getting for not properly introducing the player to the game's mechanics, and therefore being completely overwhelmed at the boss fight. Firstly, yes, there is definitely a difficulty spike in the boss fights, but I personally have to disagree here with the mechanics, and actually point out the opposite, that the game, in my opinion, does a great job at preparing the player for the harder challenges. So obviously keep in mind there are some mixed opinions on this, but it is nothing you should worry about, in my personal view at least. Lunar Abyss has a strong sense of place, and some genuinely creative ideas with the possession mechanics and the unsettling world, but the combat is too easy for too long. The weapons, as I said, feel limited, and once you have seen the grimy purple aesthetics for a few hours, then it stops being striking and becomes more like background noise. And this sentence concludes today's video. If your time was respected, a like or comment is very much appreciated.
I can't recall